We only got one speaker for this meeting, but, you know, I picked that speaker for a reason. Mike Schofield is my Texas State representative. And Mike went through, he's been here to numerous meetings. Anybody's been here at all knows him very well. But went through a difficult election. And honestly, I was shocked. Because as far as I'm concerned, there is no one that works the district harder than Mike Schofield does. And for have him to lose by the slimmest of margins, it was a shock to me. So I wanted him to come to my last meeting as director and speak to us about, you know, yeah, just speak to us about anything. You know, Mike is not short of words, so we can pull 2 hours. And hopefully he won't fill that because, you know, we have our rants as well. And I think everybody enjoys that part of it. But Mike, if you would come up and speak to us today and talk to us about that election and what the future holds for you as well. Thank you so much for coming, Mike.
Thanks for having me. I don't know how many times I've spoken to this group. I feel like Joey Bishop guest hosting the Tonight Show. But I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of you coming out, doing the work. But I want to take a moment of personal privilege. You know, in the House, we have what we call personal privilege speeches that aren't about the bill. It's just about something that's important to you. And I want to take a moment of personal privilege to thank Dave Wilson for all the work that he's done, not only with this group. A group doesn't hold together unless somebody actually does the work and make sure there are speakers, make sure that we have a place, schedule things, and actually get people to show up. But also all the work he's done as a precinct chair. You know, a lot of you don't know this because we've been pretty tight, but my first time out, he wasn't for me. He was for one of my opponents. My opponent won one precinct. And that's the one Dave had because Dave walked the entire precinct. And that's the kind of dedication and that's the kind of work that actually gets things done. It belies what you hear a lot of people think, well, my vote doesn't count, what does one person do? And so they'd rather sit on their couch and not do anything and bemoan what's going on than getting out there. One person can do a lot. If you're willing to put in the work and if you're willing to give of yourself, one person can make a huge difference. And Dave, you've made a huge difference in our area, both in a precinct that basically didn't exist before. I mean, it's new. And that's one of the things I explained about my district people. Where there was grass, there are now subdivisions. You have a place that didn't have a history, didn't have ongoing organizations, didn't have a structure, and if you just get on the ground and work it, you can make something. And if you can make something of something that's brand new, you can certainly make something of an established neighborhood for those of you who live in there. So Dave, I just wanted to take the time to thank you, give you your best wishes in your future. And I'm sure we have not heard the last of it.
No, you have not.
Let me put it this way. I rest assured we have not heard the last of it. Nor have you heard the last of me. As Dave pointed out, it was a tough election. I lost by 113 votes out of 67,000 cast. I think they had more people than that illegally registered to vote at like mailbox, etc., and UPS and vacant lots and things. It's legal to register at those places if you don't have an address. So homeless people are allowed to vote, and they get to vote from somewhere. And they're supposed to pick a place that is either approximate to really where they stay, or you can register where you get your mail. And we put that in statute for homeless people. So instead, the Democrats just ignored that part and just said you can register to vote where you get your mail. And so they would register somebody who actually has a place where they live in a Democrat district where they don't need to vote. And they would register them in a district where they wanted to vote. Well, that's not legal. If you have an address, that's where you have to register. These elections are for the people who live here. We can't all just decide, you know what, let's all there was just a Senate District 6 special election in Southeast Harris County. We can't decide we'd like to vote in it and just register at the UPS store there. We actually have homes. We live here. That election is for those folks over there. And they did a lot of it. And that's fine, but those things can only hurt you if the election's close. So I feel like a football team that goes into the game knowing we have to win by a touchdown and a field goal in order to win it all. But that's all right. That's what we know going forward. And we are going to do that. I think A lot of the Republicans got caught unawares this time. I mean, they knew there was supposed to be this wave and all that. But the Democrats were in the 21st century using advanced data analytics. Instead of saying, well, this is a 70% Republican neighborhood, we'll just stay out of it, they would say, it's a 30% Democrat neighborhood, let's find the 30%. And so they would buy all this consumer data and they would put all this stuff together so that they would know, okay, we're not going to talk to him, but his next door neighbor we're going to get, and the person 2 streets down and 1 house over we're going to get, and they just went exactly to the people they wanted to get. And the Republicans were doing back of the envelope math like it was 1980. I literally got on the Friday after early voting closed and before the Tuesday election, I got a list from the party of every registered voter in my district who hadn't voted yet, who didn't have Democrat primaries. And we were supposed to call them. Now in the 1980s, that was considered state of the art. But what it means is, okay, you've taken out people with Democrat primary history, but all of the November Democrats, all the ones who don't vote in primaries but are going to come out and vote Democrat if they come out, you're calling them to turn them out to vote. So you've got a list where you say, if I make 11 calls, I'm going to turn out 7 Republicans and 4 Democrats. And we used to consider that good because that was +3. Well, Democrats are targeting, if they make 11 calls, they're turning out 11 Democrats. So every 11 calls they make, they're getting 11. Every 11 calls I make, I'm getting 3. That's, we got to get past that. They had a perfect storm this time. They were still angry that Hillary Clinton didn't get to come and tear up the rest of the Constitution. And so that motivated them from the beginning. They were able to get Beto O'Rourke. And imagine this. Imagine for a second, just sort of take a deep breath and think, what if the Republicans had run against a Hispanic incumbent, an Irishman, and had claimed he was the Hispanic? The media would have mocked us every single day. We would have been a laughing stock from coast to coast. Colbert would be talking about it on late night television. The Democrats did that here, and it got away with it. The media, of course, wouldn't say anything about it. But also, our people didn't do a good enough job. Occasionally, they would call him Robert Francis O'Rourke, and that was nice. What we need to do, we need to be much better at getting our message out. And in that particular case, every single day, we should have been saying, this is an insult to every Hispanic voter in the state of Texas, that you think they're so stupid that they're going to vote for an Irishman pretending to be Hispanic over an actual Hispanic. And if you do that, you pound it every day, it gets into the mainstream. Instead, I don't know what our guys were doing, but they weren't doing that. And you have to go out there and go back. We know going into it that we're always going uphill. We're not going to have any of the media with us. That's fine. That's the way it is. We're not going to get it. We're not going to get anything approaching an even break. That's fine too. And so we have to work harder than the other guys do, and we have to work smarter. And the reason why this is all important, the reason why you all came out. And by the way, I think this is probably the biggest crowd I've ever spoken to at Cypress Tea. So I think that's another tribute to Dave. Everybody wanted to come out for his last meeting. Because I doubt very much it was that big Christmas election season that brought you out. But the reason why this is all important, and the reason why all the tactical stuff that we talk about, all of the daily things that get everybody excited, the reason is, at its foundation, where we are going as a country is at stake. Are we going to continue to be a country based on freedom of the individual, where you can build your own life, and where government mostly gets out of the way and lends a hand where appropriate? Or are we going to be a country where the government runs your life, tells you what to do, and takes care of you by depriving you of your ability to make your decisions for yourself? And I spent a lot of time recently studying the Brexit. In England, the UK voters voted to leave the European Union, and that's been a big brouhaha. And they're literally saying, this will be a disaster if we go because we can't govern ourselves anymore. A nation that was a free, sovereign country for nearly 1,000 years is now feeling publicly that it is incapable of making its own decisions for itself about everything from what you can put in chocolate to how many people you can allow into your own country to what your tax rates have to be. They have so crippled themselves by submitting to a socialist European Union that they don't even have confidence that they can govern themselves anymore. And under 8 years of Obama, we had a federal government that was trying to model us after them. And ever since Hillary's original health care plan during the Clinton administration, remember the one that she sent to Congress, just complete, and they were supposed to just vote on it? Apparently she'd never seen Congress before, but they don't do that. Ever since then, we have had a federal government and a Democratic Party who are trying to model us on the direction Europe's going. Now, I don't know about you, but if I see somebody going as fast as they can towards a cliff and trying to go right off of it, I'm not going to get in line behind them and try to follow. I mean, think about Europe for a second. We have a group of countries that at one point ruled the entire globe, and in recent years, due to their inherent socialism and due to the fact that they basically weighed themselves down, they're so insignificant we don't even consult them when we make major foreign policy decisions. And that's who we want to model ourselves after. We want to model our health care after countries where if you need dialysis, you can't get it because they haven't got enough of it. That's who we want to model. Oh, you're all covered. You all got insurance for it. But by the way, you can't actually get it. And I think I've told you this before. Many of you have seen me in the numerous times I've spoken here. But when I worked for Governor Perry, one of the things that we all had to do was we had a tour of the Texas prison system. And you go to death row, and you go over to Huntsville and see all of this. And at one point, we went up to the medical unit. And I saw all these things that looked like these ladies' hair dryers from the beauty parlor. I said, what are those? And the guy said, no, those are dialysis machines. And he said, you know, a lot of our clients were intravenous drug users, and they've sort of collapsed their veins, and now they have problems and they need dialysis. And he said, by the way, we have more dialysis machines for prisoners in the Texas prison system than they have in London for their whole population. And those are the folks that we're going to emulate. So you'll have insurance coverage. You'll be covered, but you won't be able to get it. You won't be able to get the treatment. That's where we're going to go if we just submit and allow them to take over and have the federal government run our lives. And that's actually what they're aiming for. They think that as long as you can't get any better deal than anybody else, everything's good, no matter how bad the deal is. So if no one can get dialysis, that's perfectly fine. I can't imagine that the country would agree to go in that direction, and it wouldn't if we had a full and open debate on it. But that's not what you're going to get in the media. And social media has just descended into just savage attacks of everybody on everybody. And it's not just in politics. When I try to get away from that, I'll go on the sports sites and look at it, and it's just as bad there. We have reached a point now where, due to the technology, there's no filter and there's no forum. We think of it as a forum, but in a forum there's actually a moderator and there's some rules, and you know, even the free speech alley at your college, there were certain rules about what you could and couldn't do, and you couldn't take over the thing the entire time, and you couldn't defame people, and you couldn't just, a bunch of things you couldn't start shooting people. And now we've just descended into a part where everybody feels entitled to be heard without having to think first, without having to learn anything about what they're talking about first. And it's largely just laced with invective. It's just, if you don't agree with me, it's hate, hate, hate. And how can you do that? Well, think about for the last 100 years, we've had radio and then television. You might only have 3 stations in your market, and they had to sort of broadcast. They had to make sure that you're willing to watch it, and you're willing to watch it, and you're willing to watch it. So they have to come with some sort of socially accepted norm of where we can go, and they have to try to make sure kind of all the sides are heard, and there's something for you on this. Not just something for these 3 people over here that the rest of you don't want. Now,
We have these narrow little streams, and nobody steps out and put outside their stream and listens to anything else other than what they already believe. And they just sit there and think everybody must think what I do. How can these other idiots not? Because everybody thinks like I do. And then you get just nothing but invective and no real thought. So into that step the Democrats going, we're going to get as many young people who've never voted, people who haven't been involved in the process, and just drag them and say, you can have free stuff, other people owe you, just by dint of the fact that you've been born, you're entitled, and just go take it from them. And that excites them. I can get free stuff. And they came out and voted. And the funny thing is, it's nobody's fault but ours. I mean, the millennials didn't raise themselves. Somebody raised them to believe that you're entitled to be heard no matter what no matter whether or not you've bothered to learn about the subject. It's almost like there are no wrong answers. Well, in a lot of things there are wrong answers. I hope our engineering schools never adopt this because I don't want the bridges falling down. But we convinced people that, and any of you who've tried to hire millennials will know, it's from day one, they expect to have your job, your pay, and the first thing they want to know is how many weeks off do I get? And that is a difficult mindset to try to then explain to somebody has to build this. This company you just came into didn't just exist and we just hand out free money. Somebody put the time into making this thing work. Our 4 competitors didn't, and they're out of business. And we are still trying to climb this mountain. It isn't, we're not at the end where we're just dissolving it and handing out the profits. But the D's have got that mindset, and that's what they're selling. It's just out there, and you should get your share. Whereas for the first 250 years or 235 years of our existence, what we were about was opportunity and go make your share. And that's all anybody asked for a couple of centuries in this great experiment of the United States, was give me the opportunity to go out and make my way, and I will produce, I will create, and then I will enjoy the benefits of what I've done. And now what the Democrats are selling is just come and get the benefits of the pie. Well, who's going to bake the pie? Who's going to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and knead the dough? And who's going to cut up the ingredients? And who's going to go out and get them? And who's going to do all that if at the end of the day, you're not entitled to any more of the pie than anybody else is? And the Chinese started in the 40s after their revolution. They did a year where it was the Marxist approach of from each according to his ability and to each according to his needs. And what they did was they spread out the results of the farming, the crops amongst all the farmers. And the first year, some people worked their butts off, because that's what they'd always been doing, and other people didn't work as hard. And guess what happened in the second year? The guys who'd worked their butts off and didn't get the proceeds didn't work as hard. Production fell off the floor, and people starved. It is the dumbest idea in the history of mankind to tell people that you can get as if we had already produced before you produced anything. But we've raised a generation to believe that. And we've got to get them back, because you can't make your way in the world assuming everybody owes you, because then there isn't anything to owe. Now the good news is that we're actually hearing research that the generation coming in below the millennials actually doesn't have that philosophy. And they're actually going to be better off than their forebears. Not their parents, it's sort of the half generation. But the kids coming in underneath them have more of an understanding that they want to get out there and do something, as opposed to, as soon as I show up, gimme. And that they're going to be a breath of fresh air, and they're going to be very much needed, because you can't have all takers and no builders. The world doesn't work like that, and it's not going to work. It's not a philosophy. It doesn't work. Somebody has to do the work and create everything. So anyway, that's me going on a rant, but the point is what brings you all here, why you come to a Tea Party meeting as opposed to doing something else on a Saturday, is our basic fundamental philosophy, which has worked while everybody else is cratered, while Europe has gone down the tubes. What has built us up is that we believe in opportunity and hard work, individual achievement, individual responsibility, and individual reward. And if we let that go away as the underpinning of our country, we'll never get it back. And there are people that don't want us to. They don't want, they teach in our schools, no competition. Competition is bad, sharing is good. Well, that's great once you've already got something. If you're the heirs to it, share all you want. But there won't be anything to share if you don't have those entrepreneurs out there willing to build, willing to do the work, and they're not going to do that unless they're going to get the reward. Entrepreneurs aren't stupid. They don't put all that time and effort and risk in so that if they finally get to the top of the mountain, they can just get leveled off and lose everything that they worked for. And so we have to keep working to make sure that that happens. Now, how do we do that? Well, first of all, we have to get our message has to get out a lot better. Our message is the best message in the history of mankind. It's that you and you and you can matter and can have your own individual right to build your life. It doesn't get much better than that as a philosophy. But that little, we'll just give you candy right now instead of building a nutritious meal and having your own ability to build your health we'll just give you candy right now. That's awfully enticing. And it's always been awfully enticing. Every time there are bad times, they should just give you. And we heard that in the beginning of the 20th century with the progressive movement. We heard it during the Depression, and there were big efforts to make government take over more and make sure you were okay. And every time you lost more freedom, you lost more of the ability to take what you had earned and keep it and build it for yourself and your family. And you lost just a little more each time, but mostly we didn't notice. Just a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And if you look at the income tax rates over the years, and you'll see how much more the government has taken over what you do. And now the government wants to take over healthcare, which is now 22 or 23% of the entire economy. And that's just 22 or 23% of everything you've built, everything you've earned, everything you've done, that they're going to take and redistribute. Because they do such a good job of it. If we allow that to happen, we will never get the country back. And again, they don't want us to get the country back. They want us to be Europe, where no one can succeed and no one can fail. And our standard of living gets lower and lower and lower, and your intrinsic freedom gets lower and lower and lower, to the point where we'll end up like Britain, where when somebody says, we have a chance to be free, do you want to take it? We don't think we can do it. And as I was reading a book about it, and the book was written by an advisor to the Prime Minister who was in the Conservative Party. And most of the Conservatives were voting to leave. But if you're in the government, you sort of feel responsible for it, and I guess they felt like they had to be part of the stay in Europe movement. And by the way, if you ever find yourself pushing some issue where all of your members of your party are against you and you're lining up with the members of the other parties, chances are you may be taking the wrong position. I'm sitting there reading through all this going, at what point is he going to recognize the fact that he has to work totally with members of the opposition, and the people that he's really steamed at are guys in his own party. But they never quite got to that. And as I'm reading all this, they are scoffing at the arguments about sovereignty. They're trying to make argument as if whether to leave or stay in Europe is just, like today's farm bill. It doesn't really matter in the long run. It's just today's issue. And they're missing the fact that the people who want to leave Europe have two big things. One is a current issue. One is immigration. Too many immigrants are coming in, taking all their jobs, changing their culture. It's almost not their country anymore. You can hardly find any Englishmen in England anymore. But the big issue that's scoring big, in addition to immigration and the economic worry that you're going to lose your job, the big issue that the incumbents just scoffed at was sovereignty. And people kept saying, why should some court in Brussels tell us, and one of the things literally is what you have to put in chocolate, because the Belgian chocolate makers wanted to be protected. They didn't want you to make chocolate cheaper in England, so you had to use the high quality ingredients they used and all that. And then, you know, in every aspect, somebody from Brussels is telling you in England what you have to do, and you don't have the ability to say, no, we're a sovereign country. And again, the people that were pushing the stay, or the, you know, I think it was called Stronger In campaign, they just blew that off like that wasn't even important. They were at a fundamental crossroads in the history of their nation. And they had, in their own minds, subjugated themselves so much to what was supposed to just be a trade agreement, so that all, you know, these smaller countries could band together and compete with the U.S. It had gotten to the point where they traded so much of their sovereignty in exchange for this that they didn't even notice when the big issue on the table is, are we going to be free or not? God forbid we ever get to that point. But there's an entire party dedicated to driving us there. And they just had a big night. Now, normally in a wave election, I always counsel people, don't get too worried. You know, in 2008, Obama came in, and it was all exciting, so the Democrats swept a whole bunch of seats. People were like, oh my God, it's the end of the world, it's going to change. I said, relax. You know, 2 years later, a lot of those will get swept right back. And they did. And normally that would be true of this particular wave, except for two important features of this election. One is, next time's a presidential year. Usually the waves happen in presidential years. And so next time is a presidential year, so Democrats tend to come out more in presidential years and less in other years. And they got them to come out through the use of a lot of those analytics I talked about, through the use of emotion, because people, frankly, vote more on emotion than they do on reason. It would be nice if they voted more on reason than emotion. But it's just not the way people make all kinds of decisions. Everything from buying a car to buying a house to big decisions you think they would make based on reason and logic that tend to come from here instead. But also, they combine all that reason and I mean all the emotion and all that with data analytics so they can find all these people, and they'll have all that again next time. And next time, Donald Trump will be on the ticket, and all the people that can't stand him, they won't be voting against him in abstention, they'll be voting against him actually on the ballot. So we have a lot of work to do. I don't want to fool you into thinking this is going to be easy, and a lot of the seats that we lost that we shouldn't have lost we'll get back. And of course, a lot of them won't be on the ballot. A lot of these 4-year terms, and you know, the county judge is not on the ballot 2 years from now. You can't correct that until 2 years after that, if you can. If by then the demographics haven't gone so far along that you can't get it back. But we have a lot of work to do, and what we are counting on is for you all to do it. And not just you, but you know, to get your neighbors, to get other people involved. One of the things I noticed this cycle, you know, we just had the elections in November, it's a month later, and a lot of the Republican clubs canceled their Christmas parties. They didn't cancel them to start with. They advertised them, they sent out, you know, notes, they tried to get, and they couldn't get anybody to come. And 4 or 5 groups canceled their party. I went to one this week where they said, we're just not canceling. It was held in a small back room where it usually has the bigger room. But they said, we're just doing it. But what people can't do is get discouraged. You know, this is almost like a tug of war. And the other side is just hoping you'll just let go of the rope so they can win. And you've got to hold on, you've got to pull. Now it's inherent on the rest of us who are actually in the arena to get you reinforcements. It can't all be those of us who remember Johnny Carson. You know, it has to be, you know, we have to mix in some younger people, and we have a lot to do. The other side spent decades getting control, even while we were in power, getting control of the levers of information. You know, you can't go into a school and hear about that Ronald Reagan was a good president. You can't go into a school and hear about Thomas Jefferson except that he was a slave owner. You know, you can't go into a school and hear that competition is good. You know, and all of those things that they have spent decades drumming into people, and God forbid you go to a college campus. The same people who went to school in the 60s and the 70s and held demonstrations for free speech are now at the top of those universities denying free speech to anybody who doesn't agree with them 100% down the line. The idea of sharing information, of having a speaker come in so we can hear something else, they'll shut it down. And the very free speech people, their strategy now is end the debate, have no speech, shut them down. And there are entire books written. They never did believe in free speech. They wanted their side speech to get it. They never, even from the 60s on, they never believed in a free and open debate. They believed in winning. And to this day, all they believe in is winning. That's why it doesn't matter to them if they cheat in an election. It's fine. That's why if you try to catch them cheating, they'll shout you down and claim that you're suppressing votes. Anytime you hear Democrats talk about voter suppression, what they mean is you're stopping them from cheating. How dare you? Because nobody suppresses an actual voter. If an actual person who lives here and is above 18 and isn't a felon shows up, they register to vote, nobody stops them. If they show up with their driver's license to vote, nobody stops them. There's no voter suppression.
No,
What there,
about provisional, that's the word.
yeah, what there is us catching them, registering people where they don't live. We've got dozens of people registered in vacant lots in my district. Again, if this were a place with a lot of homelessness, you could see somebody registering a vacant lot. In Katy, there are about 3 homeless people. Everybody knows who they are. You literally have lunch and there he goes, and they'll talk, and they'll tell you his whole story. It was unfortunate how he got on drugs, and then his mom tried to stop it, and all this stuff. These are not homeless people. These are people that don't live here, being registered here to vote. That doesn't bother them, because what they're about is winning. And we are handicapped by the fact that we actually have ethical principles, but that's all right. I'd rather take my ethical principles and find a way to win than give them all up just to gain power. And the power they want is to control your life. It's really hard to get people interested in, let's fight really hard to win so we can not take control of everything and let the people do what the people do. It's a lot harder to get somebody to devote their time and their treasure and their life to that than it is to say, let's get in charge and we can have control of everything. And we can tell everybody how to live. And I've said this before. I said this the very first time I spoke here. When I briefly lived in Washington, D.C. for a year and a half in around 2000. And I was always amazed at the government buildings. I said, the last thing they must build there before they open it is the arch over the doorways. Because there's some magical electromagnet there that when you walk in, suddenly you become smarter than everybody else. Because before you got hired, you were one of those stupid masses that shouldn't be able to decide whether or not to buy their own health care. They shouldn't be able to decide who to hire and how much to pay them. They shouldn't be able to decide any of these things for themselves. But the smart people in those buildings can decide that. So it must be something in that doorway that once you walk in, you suddenly become smart enough to be able to tell everybody else how they should live. Because the rest of the people sure don't know. Or at least that's the philosophy of government. Well, the reality is they don't know any better. And that's why all the central planning has failed. We have people now who are trying to refight the 20th century. And it's like, here's an idea. Why don't you just read a history book? I can tell you how it turns out. Central planning doesn't work. Not only does it not work economically, it stifles freedom to the point where your population completely loses their entire faith in themselves, their entire ability to actually create, their ability to do anything. And you end up with East Germany. No difference between the East Germans and the West Germans, except where we drew a line after World War II. Then look a few decades. The cars in East Germany don't work. The healthcare system is in a complete shambles. They have shortages in the grocery stores. And then you walk across an imaginary line with a wall, and you have Mercedes-Benz, BMWs and Volkswagens. You have fully stocked shelves. You have arts, you have writing, you have creativity. You have everything you don't have on the other side. And look at the Soviet Union. It's theoretically a superpower with nuclear weapons. Did Ronald Reagan break the Soviet? Did Ronald Reagan go in there and knock the Soviet Union out? It was more like Muhammad Ali fighting George Foreman. If you remember that fight, Ali just hung on the ropes. He let Foreman just punch himself out, and eventually Foreman basically fell down. Ali barely hit him, and he sort of spiraled on the ground and went down. And that was the Soviet Union. It collapsed from within because they couldn't produce anything. They had as much oil and gas as we did, as has been proven ever since. They had as much agriculture, they had more agricultural land than we've got. They had a history and a tradition of arts and of writing and of all that stuff. And all they did was stifle all of it with a top-down dictatorship that just completely beat the people down until they had nothing left. That's not what I want for us. I'm going to devote the rest of my life to seeing that we don't have that. And I hope you will. And I know that you're all here because you all believe that. We are going to, on the ground level, we're going to go out and fight to get it back. I'm already running to get my seat back in 2020. And a lot of other folks who had tough elections this time are doing the same. And we're going to be counting on you the way we've always counted on you to be the bulwark, because this is all done by the people. You have a few guys on the ballot. They're not the citizens. They're the representatives of the citizens. This only works when all of you remember why you're here and work to make sure that our past lights the way for our future. And that we don't end up like that. We don't end up like the Soviets. We don't end up like the East Germans. Because there's no West Germany for us to merge with. If we blow this country, there isn't another place to go. So that's basically all I had to say. More than I had to say, but as usual, I went on and said it.
Question?
Any questions, or if you want to actually talk about the legislature, fire away.
I got one. One of the things that my wife Terry had told me about that got me very concerned about too is that the next election in 2020 is going to be right at the census year. Redistricting comes up, and if we lose control of that, you essentially lose Texas to the Democrats. How do you feel?
Yes, there's another one of the great things about Republicans is they're always afraid of being yelled at. And so the Democrats learn that they need to yell racist, racist, racist anytime you don't agree with them on something. And they've managed to get Congress over the years to pass stupid laws that are really designed to help the Democrats. And one of them was a section of the Voting Rights Act. Originally, it was about race. When it was passed in the 1960s, the very first case on the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act was in Jackson, Mississippi. It was black Democrats versus white Democrats. And what the white Democrats did was they split up a bunch of the city council districts into little fingers like this, so that there was no one district where the blacks could have enough votes to actually get a member. And so they split them up into 4 different districts so that you get white Democrats winning all. That was about race. That was about which race you were in. The seat was designed to favor one race because they were all Democrats. Over the years, as most of the minority migrated to the Democratic Party, you now have this thing flipped on its head, where it's not about race anymore, it's about your political philosophy, your party, all the things that partisan elections are supposed to be about. If you're liberal and I'm conservative, we are supposed to differ, and we're supposed to fight it out in the election, and my side's supposed to try to beat your side and vice versa. Well, they have allowed the Voting Rights Act to be interpreted over the years to say, essentially, if you have a Democrat seat, you're not allowed to mess with it, but if you have a Republican seat, have at it. And that's how they've interpreted it, and that's how they've allowed it to stand. It is clearly unconstitutional as it is being enforced. There's sort of 2 types of unconstitutionality. If something's facially invalid, just on the face of it, it's unconstitutional, that's one thing. And then we have what we refer to as applied. So as it's written, it may not be unconstitutional, but as it's applied, it clearly is. The Voting Rights Act today is being used to say, if the Democrats have a seat, you're not allowed to mess with it in redistricting. But if the Republicans do, go right ahead. This is not Lebanon. You can't do that. But the courts have let them, because it started off with a legitimate purpose, and it started off with a legitimate application, and has over the decades gotten to the point where we say we're going to use the law to favor one party. And so the Democrats' view of things is, we start off with our seats pre-drawn, and then we should have our share of the rest of the map too. Now, they've had trouble over the years with that. In the 80s, I think, the Republicans in North Carolina first figured out, well, if you draw all these Democrat seats, based on race, well, we're going to win a lot more of the rest of the seats, because they're going to have taken a lot of the Democrats and shoved them into these few seats, which is, by the way, usually called packing, and it's usually illegal to do. But in order for them to create as many Democrat seats as possible, they got to pack these, and we're going to win all the rest of them. And so basically the North Carolinians said, have at it. Draw as many of these seats as you think you can win, knowing that they would win all the rest of the seats, because you just denuded them of Democrats. Well, now we've gotten to the point where if a Democrat holds the seats, like musical chairs now, when the music stops at the census, if a Democrat holds the seat, the argument is that that seat must therefore be the seat that the minority voters got their candidate of choice for. Whereas if a Republican wins, we assume that the minority voters did not get their candidate of choice. And by the way, it doesn't matter who the candidate is. We have Hispanic Republicans, and that's considered not to be a minority choice candidate because he's a Republican. So we literally get to the point where if you win the seat in the redistricting year, you get to keep it. If you don't win it in the redistricting year, you can't get it back. Whereas the Democrats don't have that problem. If they win it in the redistricting year, they get to keep it, and if you want it, they might cut it up enough that they can get a Democratic seat out of it. So they can gain, but you can't. And that's somehow considered okay, because again, for Democrats, it's all about winning and gaining power. Being fair, being equal, rule of law, none of that has any application. And it never has.
Mike, a couple things. Quick comment. First of all, I didn't know that you lost your election. I was going to say, we sure don't want to see the last of you. I'm glad to hear that you're going off and get your seat back. And you're starting now. Which kind of leads to the question I got. What's going on right now statewide? What's the plan for 2020? Whatever it is, we need to get started with it now. And I think you've got the right messages. But those need to get out there. They better start pretty quick.
Yes, and I think the Democrats are more cohesive. I know that the day after the election, there were 12 new, in the Texas legislature, Texas House, the Democrats picked up 12 seats. Now, some of them were open seats, but they picked up 12. They didn't beat 12 incumbents, but they picked up 12 seats. And the day after, they invited them all to a meeting at the Capitol to kind of orient them. But then the Democratic Party called them and said, we'd like to have a little meeting with you about your re-election. They are already on top. So Republicans don't have a structure. Our state party doesn't do anything to help candidates get elected. Our county party, God bless them, doesn't do much. We don't have an operation that is out there, year round, actually doing the things that get people elected. We putter around, we have meetings and stuff, but we don't have any. The Democrats had 800 people on the payroll in Harris County doing grassroots. Not just the volunteers. They had paid people knocking on doors every day. Now, they weren't all in my district, obviously. My district is 1/24th of Harris County. But they also strategically put them where they needed them. They also would go into, say, a Valerie Swanson's district. They're not going to win that district. But they'll find the Democrats and turn them out, and that will help their 27-year-old candidate, whose name I still can't remember, beat Ed Henry. They do that kind of thing. We don't have an organization. Like one of the things that I've been looking at, and I've already had some meetings with it, just talking about people about sort of building our own permanent structure. You can't base it on the party because the party structure comes and goes every 2 years at the convention. New people can get elected. They can have more emphasis on it or less. They can be more confident or less. Sometimes they can raise more money or less. And so you really can't have it at the state party, and neither do the Democrats. And so we need to find, and Abbott has a fairly decent database and all of that. So again, governors come and go. They come and go less frequently than the 2-year cycle, but they come and go. So we have to work on that, having a more permanent campaign structure. Campaigns do matter. I mean, people sort of think that it's all predetermined, but campaigns matter.
What I hear you describe it as a formula for we'll lose again.
That's what we have to build our own.
It sounds to me like somebody needs to lead the charge up there. I think we're looking at it.
Well, and we can't, what we can't do is spend a year with everybody, you know, number one, trying to avoid blame for the last one, and then two, trying to fight for who gets to be in charge. This is like, you know, the heck with that. We need to just, and what you need is you need a few donors who understand, because, you know, Democrat donors from around the country poured money in here because they're looking at redistricting. They want to, you know, they want to pick up however many seats in Congress they can by drawing them on a map, rather than having to win the elections. And that way, they can take over Congress and hold it. And, you know, that's what they're looking at. Republican, you know, donors, the big national ones, they didn't spend any money. And nobody really asked them to. You know, Texas has been an ATM machine for both parties for years, where they come in here to raise money to spend other places. But now I think they need to realize this is the battleground. It's the battleground for redistricting, it's the battleground for, you know, for the long term, for the electoral votes, for the presidency, and all of that. Right now, it was rural Republicans that were the stalwarts that kept the Republican Party in power. You know, which, by the way, means, you know, a lot of the things that are important to the rural folks, you know, are going to hold sway over things that might be more important to your neighborhood because they came out and voted for this. And we have to get the suburbs back. It's a matter of convincing a lot of people that were, you know, the Democrats had this great message. They didn't really have anything behind it, but they just said, you know, basically the Republicans were against you. They were against women. They actually put out an ad saying, or put out a constant stream of social media ads, saying that the Republicans had taken money away from, had shut down a women's health care program. The actual vote was to take money away from Planned Parenthood, which doesn't provide pap smears or mammograms, to give it to organizations who do. In other words, the vote was actually to provide women's health care. But because Planned Parenthood is a big donor to the Democratic Party, how dare you take money away from Planned Parenthood? You know, that's women's health care. No, it's not. No, we have mammograms and pap smears and all kinds of pregnancy, you know, the regular steps during pregnancy, all the different. I've never been pregnant, so I don't know what the steps. But you know, but the various and sundry steps that you go along the way, all the different things that you do along the way. We're actually spending money on that rather than giving it to the Democrat group, and so they got all upset.
How big was the influence of the new residents of Katy in our area coming from other states? How big of an influence did that have?
Well, it kind of depends how you. People don't tend to move to a place and then run right out to the polls. The Democrats did a great job. I said campaigns matter. The Democrats did a great job of finding these people. They turned out tons of new voters who had never voted before. And again, they used data analytics that our people either weren't willing or weren't able to use. Some weren't willing because they were consultants who've been around a long time and did things the way they wanted to. I've even talked to some younger consultants who try to talk you out of all that. You know, they want to do things the way that they're comfortable with, the way that they can do it. And I'm like, these guys went and found, and what data analytics allows you to do, they will buy thousands of points of consumer data on all of you. And I mean you, not somebody like you, all of it. They buy stuff from your credit card company, they buy stuff from your bank, they buy stuff from all the stores you shop at, they buy stuff from the swimming pool companies, the car companies, everything. And by the way, anybody can get this data. Marketing departments in every major company buy all this stuff too. They want to be able to figure out a picture of their consumer. In the old days, we would have a couple of points of data. We would know you had a pickup and a hunting rifle and subscribe to Field and Stream, and from that somebody would sit there and look and decide that you were Republican. There's no deciding when you have 8,000 points of data. The little points form a dot matrix and you look exactly like other voters just like you. So they may never have heard of you. You may have just got here this week from Wichita. You might have moved here from Delaware. You might be new to voting. You might just not ever vote. They're not looking at your past voting history. They are looking at all the things you buy and whether you fill up on your gas on a Tuesday or a Thursday, all these different things that together form a picture that makes you look like 40,000 other voters. And so they know who you vote for. Then and that's better, it's better, both parties should do it, but it's better for the party whose people don't come out much. And so the Democrats have long thought these people who never participate would vote for us if they voted. which is probably true, right? If they, you know, these guys, if you have a responsible job and you are involved in civic activities and you go to church on Sunday, chances are you come out and vote as a matter of civic duty. If you don't, you're more likely to be somebody who they figure will vote for them. And you're a low information voter, so you're easy to persuade. We'll give you free stuff. We literally had people who were being told your kids can get free college. Oh, well then we'll vote for that. Really? What does college cost now? Times all the people out there. You really think that there is a government big enough to provide all of that? But they bought it and they came out and voted. So your question was, you know, did the new people moving here make an influence? They didn't come rushing out to the polls and say, we're going to take this place over. Democrats came out and found them. And again, they don't have to, the traditional way of doing it from Abraham Lincoln forward was, first thing you do is you find out who votes in this election. So in case of election, it's a voter list. But if it's your church, you go, okay, the members of the church, whoever it is, who votes in this election? You go get the list. The second thing is you contact them and you try to persuade them to vote for you. And then the third part, that's really two parts. And then the third part is, at the end, you turn out the ones who are going to be for you. They may have started off for you, or you may have persuaded them to be for you, but by the end, you turn them out. But that first step was always, I've got to knock on Dave's door, or I got to see Dave at church, and I got to ascertain whether Dave will be for me. I can just ask him flat out, or I can give him a survey that shows all the different positions he has. Whatever it is, I find out whether he's for me, and then I put him on the naughty or the nice list. Right? Okay, you know, he's going to vote for us. As election day comes, let's go talk to Dave and get him to come out to vote. And you would pound your people till they voted. Well, the Democrats now, and we could too, get to skip that first step. They did that by buying all the data on all this. Now when they run it through the computer, they can see who would vote for them if they came. And again, you can't do that with 4 or 5 pieces of data. You'd be wrong. Lots of people like to hunt and have a pickup and vote Democrat. But when you've got thousands of them, no one ever looks at all of them and says, oh, when I put all these together, Dave Wilson's a Republican. They don't look at that. They don't have to. The data puts him in a bucket with a bunch of people just exactly like him. We know that all those ones that vote are Republicans, and so we know to go turn him out. And that's what they did. They sent people in here. They didn't go flush the precinct going, and that's what we still do. Oh, this precinct's 70% Republican. Let's flush out everybody. So we're flushing out 7 R's and 3 D's. They just go and get theirs. And I first saw it in an election in New Jersey. A guy named Dave Corzine was running for, he was a Wall Street banker, and he was running for governor. He had $100 million. And the consultants wanted him to spend more and more and more on the same stuff. Let's buy more TV ads. He said, no, I know how TV ads work. When you get 10,000 gross rating points, you've maxed out. Your message has sunk in as much as it's gonna. I don't need to spend 1 penny more on that. Let's send out more mail. Let's do. No. Again, I know the effectiveness. I know when the diminishing margin of utility kicks in, where I'm not getting any more. He goes, what can we do with this extra money? What would you have done before if you had money to do it? But you just said, we never do that because we can't do it. And they said, well, there are some of these towns that are 70% Republican. There's 30% Democrats we're never touching. He said, well, once you spend my money, I'm going to get it there. And they didn't have the advanced analytics today. They had to go down on the ground to do it. But they went into Republican towns and were like, what are these guys doing here? We've never seen them before. And they were finding the D's and they were turning them out. And come election time, they didn't go and flush out the whole neighborhood. They went to that house and that house and that house. And so we have to start doing it. We have to identify our people specifically, make elections more personal. I'm going to turn out you, but some, you know, if you want to turn out, that's up to you. But I'm turning out him because he's one of mine.
How do you find the talent, for lack of a better term, or the individuals or organizations who have the skill sets to do this?
Well, you have to kind of build it. And the irony is because most of the people who are sort of in that range of millennials, they tend to be more D's than R. So it's by definition harder to get. But we can still get some. There are still people that have it. And one of the keys to it, it's not just having computer skills and database skills. It's a different mindset. The prior generations were, I mean, just think of just a normal mindset. I want to get out of school and be done having to learn new stuff. How soon can I get into the workforce and never have to take another class again and never have to get educated ever again? Well, these people are the exact opposite. They don't just go, let me learn this one database and then I'll have it and I'll be good. Every day they try to advance more. Once they have this database, they go, how can I make it better? How can I correct it? They're constantly testing stuff. It's a different mindset. You know, the Republican political consultants who are 50, 60 years old, they figured out in the 80s the way they're going to do what they're going to do, and they still do that. These guys, from week to week, are going, okay, last election, it really worked when we sent people postcards shaming them into voting. You know, saying, I'm going to send you all live in the same neighborhood, I'm going to send you a postcard that has all of your addresses on it and names and shows whether you voted, so that you know they're going to get a card that says whether you voted or not. And I'm going to shame you into it. Well, then this year, they didn't just, let's do that again. They tested, and they found out that this time what works is telling everybody, no, everybody's doing it, it's really cool, we should all go out and vote. That Beto is really neat, and we're all going to get on board, it's the cool thing to do. And so they weren't shaming you by saying, you know, by trying to shame you. They weren't doing what is typically done, you know, oh my God, nobody's voting, your vote will count like 10 times, nobody's voting, you've got to get out and vote because nobody's voting. So no, everybody's doing it, it's really cool, you should get in on it. Because and next time they'll do something, everybody's like, well, you know, this time we had straight ticket voting, so we lost. Next time we won't have straight ticket voting. The Democrats won't do things the same way. Next time, they've already accounted for that. They know that's coming. They read the law. They were there when we voted on it. And so next time, they will have that accounted for. They'll have different tactics. They'll have different strategy. They'll have different ways of going about it. They may allocate their resources differently. Whereas we keep doing the same thing over and over again. And we got to quit them. We have to keep learning. We have to keep getting better.
So
I'm just going to sort of move from west to east this way.
how much do you think you lost based on provisional ballots?
No, we had a pretty good handle on those. We didn't get robbed of provisional. Now, next time we will, because one of the things that the Democrats did was make sure they won the county clerk. And next time they'll be counting all kinds of ballots. They'll be counting ballots of people that have never set foot in the state but voted in my district. But this time, that wasn't an issue. They did register a lot of people in my district who don't live here, and they registered more than I lost by. So, you know, yes, I mean, you know, and that's just the, you know, we've always known we don't have a level playing field. I have to win by more than my opponent wins by 1 vote, she wins. I have to win by, you know, more than 1,000 just to win. You know, and that's just the way, because there really is no remedy. There's nothing you can do about it. Particularly when they have the DA, it's not like they're going to get prosecuted for cheating. And, okay.
2 things. People hear something, but they don't retain it. If they see it, they retain it. These children do not see facts and figures. If they know that what they're happening with the liberals, guess what? Mom and Dad are going to come live with me when I'm 30 because they can't afford to stay in their own homes anymore. We have parents paying college educations, paying for the kids' car, paying for the kids' mobile phones.
You got a
all
question
this stuff.
coming?
So I mean, I see you guys talking, you know, but I never see any signs that have data on it. And the second,
That's a lot of that.
yeah, we had, first time I looked at the polls, and the youngsters who came in, probably 90% voted Democrat. How do we get the kids from registering there without saying, you know, because you can't be politically this way or that. So what do you do about that?
The kids are hard to deal with because the Democrats, they get their message into the schools. And, you know, the message that, you know, all this free stuff, Republicans are bad, Republicans are racist, they get all that into the schools. I mean, it really is amazing if you look at some of the stuff that goes on. Our schools aren't as bad. We have Katie and Cy Fair in my district, and they're both pretty good school districts. You should see some of the stuff in other places. I mean, it's just amazing.
The college out here doesn't even let us register vote.
Yeah, I mean, they did a great job. They spent decades getting to the younger kids. And I'm sure if you watch children's television programming, you know, you're going to see a message that is geared to getting them to want to vote Democrat. And and traditional values, forget those. Those are just restraining. Those are just terrible. And that's pretty much what we've always. We had a hand up over here.
Yep. And I do have a question.
Okay.
So I've been taking notes here. Some of the things that I've heard you say so far is that Democrats find new voters better than we do. They're smarter than we are in some areas. They're more cohesive. They cheat better. They bully better. Their state party is better than ours.
No, their state party is better
That's
than
what you
ours.
said. I just wrote it down. I just wrote what you said.
No, not their state party. They're organized, not through their
They
state party.
work harder. Their data analytics are better. I summarized, maybe their strategy and their tactics are better, because we keep going back to how they look at it. We don't do it the same way. So the question is, are we just too nice to win? Or are we just too poorly to win?
Both.
Okay, I'll live with that. That's my analysis.
Now, the reality
We're
is,
too nice and we're too poorly.
now the reality is you can learn from it. Part of it, when you say too nice, part of it is, as I said earlier, our guys are worried about criticism. The D's have long learned it. The reverse of that is what I call the Washington Post syndrome, which is if we elect a congressman from here with our values, we send him up there, the more he agrees with us, the more they call him awful. But whenever he goes to across the other side of the aisle and do something with the D's, then he's a statesman and all that. And you get some of, and because they live up there most of the time, you get some, they start, kind of migrating towards that phrase where they can be called a statesman and they can, now Democrats never get that kind of treatment for being bipartisan. They get that treatment for, leading the charge for socialism. But if they work with us on something, they don't get it. If the blue dog Democrats do not get the Washington Post treatment. And in recent years, they've just sort of doubled down on it, which is we'll just call you a racist constantly anytime you don't do something radically left-wing. And our people just, a lot of them just, they don't want to call me. I'm like, you know what? You call me whatever you want. I know it's full of crap. You know it's full of crap. And I'm just going to keep soldiering on to do what's right. And I'm going to call you anything they want because it's all one. Here's one thing I do not understand. Why is it that all of the media outlets are owned by liberals? We have billionaires. Why aren't they buying some of these things up? And I'm not saying they have to push their views on it. How about just a few that aren't pushing the other side's views? Now, I can tell you this as a former newspaper reporter, no matter who owns it, the kind of folks that are led into journalism are going to tend to be more liberal. And way back when, I think, was it Bush? No, it was the last Clinton race. Whoever Clinton ran for when he ran for re-election. They polled the Washington Media Corp. It was like 79% voted for Clinton. You're like, that's not, and some of the rest of them didn't necessarily vote for his opponent. They just were amongst the few who realized that a journalist probably shouldn't answer that question. But so you're going to get that bias. And that's just one of the things you have to work with. But why aren't our people, instead of doing some of the things that they are doing, which they think help, why aren't they buying up media outlets? So at least we have a fair. You go over to England and you've got some papers on the left and some on the right. You've got the BBC in between trying to be fair, but doing a weird job of it. Their idea of being fair is, if somebody just says something outrageously slanderous, and the other person just says their normal take for the day, you run them both. You don't actually say, that's outrageously slanderous.
I just wanted to know if you didn't answer part of that. Anyway, they can buy these things, but many times these news departments are independent. They kind of make that like a contract. We're going to be independent. The rest of the things.
You own it, you do what you want.
But then you get into what you just said. There's a tendency for journalists, students,
No,
There
question,
absolutely is.
Dan?
But I'll tell you something else. When I was a reporter, we didn't hire journalists.
Question?
Yeah.
the question is, sorry, you're right. Why is that so?
Well,
I want to hear him say.
Well, that's a deeper, more broad thing. I developed the theory when I was practicing law that people tend to be drawn to a profession that kind of suits their personality. Not you don't always get this. Sometimes you got to take the job that's there, but and then just kind of. But people tend to be drawn to something. So you have people, entrepreneurs. Will get really tired and bored quick sitting behind a desk. They'll quit and go out and do something. And that included in the law field. We had some. I was at a white shoe prestigious law firm, right? So by the time you get there, You're number one, the high school student who decides they're going on to college. That separates somebody out, right? And then in college, you do well enough to be able to get into law school. That separates some people out. And then you have the interest in going to law school, as opposed to wanting to be a doctor or go into business or something else, be a writer. That separates people out. So you get people, a narrower and narrower band of people that are closer and closer to being the same people, right? And then it's a question of which law school do you go to. Not only do you go to a great school like Harvard, but do you go to a regional school because you're more concerned about being in this area? Do you go to a school like Baylor with more of a reputation for trial lawyers? So you're still weeding each other, so you're getting closer and closer to being the same person. After all that, you decide to go to a big city like Houston rather than going to Wichita Falls. You decide to go to a big, giant law firm with 1,000 people, not 4 people where you can get to be a senior partner really quick. You decide to go to a giant firm downtown where you have international clients, not necessarily people that you grew up with and knew you can build that kind of business. Right? So now you've got, well, you're exactly the same. Our firm was so large, it took up 11 floors, and it just so happened that the 11 floors of the building split elevator banks. And most of the trial lawyers were above the elevator bank separation, above the 32nd floor, and most of the transactional lawyers, the guys, the deal makers, as opposed to the guys who fought with each other, were below it. So after all of those weeding downs that we did to get here, whether you were above or below the elevator bank, you were totally different kinds of people. And I mean totally, to the point where we had a gigantic $4 billion antitrust case my first year. Normally when people come in, they recruit and they split them evenly amongst the departments so they have what they need. Here they were willing to let everybody be in the trial department. So like 18 of the 22 new lawyers were all in the trial department, working on this one case, right? They didn't have space for us up there, physically, so they had to put some of us down with the other people. And you could tell the difference. They had these buttons behind your desk. It was really cool. You'd want all your friends to come visit because you had this button you hit and close the door. It was really neat. It was an electromagnet that held the door open and this button closed. And so us trial lawyers who were down on that floor, those people, they want to sit in their office and quietly read their SEC filings and that sort of thing and work on their computers. And we're trial lawyers. There's only so much time I could spend on my computer before I have to get up and do something. So the secretary sat up, we'd have to read regale. I come out and I do 10 minutes every day. We'd regale, and of course when there's more than one trial lawyer, we're cutting on each other. We're making fun of each other, because that's who we are. You could hear all the doors closing. Because these people wanted a nice, quiet life. After you've gotten all through, well, the types of people that go into different professions, it tends to matter. So if you're entrepreneurial and you want to go out there and you don't want to answer to somebody else, you want to make your own money, take your own risk, not necessarily get a paycheck, you're not going to go and work for the Houston Chronicle. That's a reporter, right? That's a different type of person. And so if you've got, all these other different aspects, if you want to, obviously if you want to treat animals, you go be a vet. You be something different than that. And so you worked your way down to the type of people who want to go be a reporter, tend to be the activists, they tend to be the, nobody goes out to be a reporter anymore like they used to 70 years ago because they want to report on what's going on. They tend to be more activists, And it's not everybody, but it's more of a tendency there that you're going to see, amongst the people who are pick your favorite thing, people that want to open Chick-fil-A, right? And so that tends to be who you get. And I say it's a lot like that in a lot of professions. And it's not, I'm not just talking about political, I'm just talking about personality. Yes, some more outgoing. A quiet, timid person is not going to be a salesman. A person who's afraid of risk or afraid, a person who has to have the steady paycheck, even if it's lower, but they know they're not going to be a salesman. Right? In fact, we had an issue in the legislature. There was a real concern because they wanted to give merit pay to teachers. Now, it wasn't going to decide how much you made. You'd make your salary, but it was extra. And a lot of them were worried about it because it's just not the mindset. Whereas somebody said to me, if you put that money in the middle of the table, they're all afraid they're not going to get it. Even though they know that they're a good teacher, they're just afraid somehow the principal won't let them have it or something. Meanwhile, if it were salesmen or trial lawyers, you could put that money in the middle of the table and they're convinced they're going to get all of it. Right? And it's just a different type of person and it's a different mindset. So that's why it's not like, the Democrats, and not the Democrats, the sort of the left, if you've ever read Rules for Radicals, they have for, most of our lifetime been planning for this. And they did their steps early. They took over the institutions of higher education. They got as much into the schools as they could. They battered and badgered till they got TV the way they wanted. Remember what it used to be? Some of the conservative family groups would boycott and go, "How dare you? It's not up to you. If you don't like it, turn the channel." That's never said when the liberal group screams and complains about, "Boom, they get it like that." How dare you not be pro-gay? We have to fire the executive producer and get rid of them, and how can you make fun of a gay character on television or whatever it might be? They just keep pounding and they get their way. Whereas our guys would go, "Oh, you're just how dare you try to promote family values?" And so they've been working on this forever. Well, it's not really one of the things that they did. They did not have a concerted plan to get reporters into the media and all that. They really didn't. You can't go back and find where they tried to get kids to steer in this direction, or they tried to recruit them for this, or they tried to hire activists to do it. It was just more of a natural progression in that sense. They were more concerned about the boardroom, about getting the editorials and getting all that done, and they've largely succeeded. Now we were heading this way to that. I don't know if there's any more on this way before we go back. If there's anybody we might have missed back here. Let me get him. I don't think he's.
Any perspective or that you want to share on your feelings of the omnibus spending bill, the way it was passed, and what that did to the party?
To be honest, I don't know too much about it. I tend to focus everything I've got on what's going on at the Texas Capitol, and so I don't pay as much attention as I used to what goes on in the feds.
I think he repeated what you said. You agreed with him. We're party led, so somebody needs to be fired, I guess.
Well, the thing is, we're not led. We're a very grassroots outfit, which is good in the sense that grassroots gets. But and the Democrats are too. That's why when you said I said the Democratic Party is better organized, I never said that. I said the Democrats are better organized. The Texas Democrat Party is not much better organized than we are.
I misunderstood.
And I don't mean to denigrate Chairman Hinojosa, who's their chairman, but the parties, they would no more locate their database and their party structure than we would in ours for the same reason. A grassroots is a great way to get the grassroots and to get the people's views, make sure the party represents what the people want, but it's not how you would hire your CEO. I would want, if I ran Amazon, I would want to know what all my guys on the line thought about our operations, because if you ignore them, they're the ones who know how this stuff works. And they could shave time off of shipping. They could make things more if you listen to them. But I don't think I would poll them when it was time to hire the next CFO, because that's not what they do. And when you're talking about the kind of data analytics and all that I'm talking about, you're not going to get that through the party convention. That has to come through the people who understand how that works. And these days, unlike in the past, the big donors tend to be. In the old days, people made their money from oil and gas, and before that, they made their money off their land, whether they were ranchers or whatever they were. And technology was not their thing. Technology is now the thing of the guys who are making all the money. So they get that. You go to a big donor and say, "This is what we're going to," and that's how the Democrats got it. This is what we intend to do. They understand that. Just like, I don't know if any of you are sports fans. Ever since the book Moneyball, the data analytics has taken over baseball and moving into other sports, even though it may not fit as well into some other sports. But they're trying. I mean, even soccer and hockey that flow and don't really have discrete stops where you can measure stuff all the time. Well, a lot of the newer owners are guys who made their billions in that sort of thing. In Oracle and in Microsoft. And you bring that idea, they get that. They understand. You're not going to an oil man or a beer brewer and trying to talk some mumbo jumbo that he doesn't know if it's real or not. They get it. So when you start talking to some of your big donors who make their money through projecting the stock market using analytics or through marketing their product using it, they understand what you're talking about, and they can actually help you with it, as opposed to just they're not writing you a big check on a leap of faith that you just got some idea that you think is going to make you money and not help them. So it can be done, but the D's didn't do it through their party structure. And any of you who want to catch up on this, there's a book out there. It was actually written in 2012. It's called the Victory Lab, L-A-B is in laboratory, by a New York Times reporter named Sasha Eisenberg. I think it's I-S-S. But it's the Victory Lab. And it's out in paperback. You can get it on Amazon for like $15. And it originally, he wanted to write about the, wait, I'm going to take up your whole 2-hour meeting. But what he wanted to write about was Obama's 2008 campaign, because it took everybody by surprise. Hillary Clinton was running her primary the way you normally did. She was going to the superdelegates, and she was going, working the folks who tend to be delegates to the convention, and she was working your regular grassroots and all that. And Obama quietly had the data analytics revolution. And he was out there identifying people that don't normally come out in these primaries, but would be for something new and exciting and change and all that. And he got them out. And he swamped her with people that they didn't see coming. Right? And that's what Sasha wanted to write about. And then the reason why I caught on to it when it first came out was one of the next cycle campaigns that used a lot of this same stuff was Governor Rick Perry's, who of course was my boss at the time. And so when I heard about this book, I said, well, I'm going to read the book and see all my friends' names in it. That was really, I'm like, hey, I know these guys. And there was a chapter on us, but as you're going through it, you're reading all this going, holy. Because this was a different way of doing it. Now again, it all goes back to Lincoln. We're going to figure out who votes in these elections. We're going to try to persuade them to vote for us. We're going to figure out, we're going to identify which ones are for us, and then we're going to turn them out. But it's using a far more sophisticated way of doing it. And you actually expand that for who votes in these elections. It comes down to who's eligible to vote in these elections, because we can get some of them who don't normally do it to come do it. But everything else is really the same as it's ever been. But it's not just a little leapfrog. It's a whole paradigm shift away from what they've been doing before, to being able to identify folks that we've never talked to, folks you don't see at any of these meetings, folks who today are doing their Christmas shopping or getting ready to watch the Texans play the Jets at 3:30 or whatever it is they're doing, not thinking about this. They're not spending the whole 2-year cycle, can't wait to get out there and vote for the candidate the next time. They may not decide to vote until the Tuesday before they vote on Thursday at early voting. But we know if they vote, they're voting for us. So what do I got to say to people? And then they start straddling. Okay, we can reach him with a message that says it's really cool to vote. We can reach him with a message that says, not enough people are voting, and we can, you can count for 10 votes. We can reach her with a message that says this is the year of the woman, we really need you. We can reach different people with different messages and get them all out there. Well, there are 7,500 bills filed in a typical Texas legislative session. There are lots of different things you can talk to people about, instead of talking about the same 3 things to everybody. There are certain things that are going to appeal to just about everybody, like property taxes, immigration, the flood. Some of those things will appeal to everybody. There are lots of other things we're doing that matter to you that you couldn't care less about. There, things that are really deeply important to you because maybe you have an autistic kid in your family that she doesn't really register with, but she's more concerned about things in, name some other strata of things that we're dealing with. Maybe she's more of a Second Amendment person, whatever it might be. And you can do that. If you get out there and do it, you can reach enough people that you can explain why things are important. Now, I think we have a really good chance to win next year. I think we have a great chance to take this district back, and I think I'm going to. But we have a good chance to do well next cycle because although we had decent turnout, a lot of our folks didn't come. Normally, you expect the Democrats to have a higher turnout than they did in an off cycle. And they will try to get everybody they got out this time back out and then still reach for more. They got 2 years to reach for more people. But there's an old saying in politics, you can't beat somebody with nobody. But it's also kind of true that you can't lose to somebody with nobody. This time, they were all mad at Trump for not being Hillary, and they had Beto versus Cruz. That was at least a race. But that was the only race. Can any of you even name the Democratic candidate for governor? There's a reason for that. They intentionally starved her for money. There was a joke in Democratic circles that if this were a fundraiser, they would say, for every $10 in this room, Beto's getting 11. In other words, we're not getting any. What they had was this really unattractive candidate who was kind of a, sort of a radical lesbian from Dallas, who every time she talked, she turned off more voters. And when she wasn't busy being sheriff, we lost her gun, which, if you've been in law enforcement, you know, that's not good. And they, you know, you can talk all you want, oh, the Republicans are racist, the Republicans. They made sure none of you heard from her. They made sure none of the donors gave her a dime. They made sure she didn't get any support from the party. She was their candidate for governor. And not only didn't they feature her, they might as well put her on a train and send her to Canada. Right? Well, next time, they're going to have a candidate. Yeah, we got our candidate for president, and some of our people love him, and lots of people hate him. Right? That's the definition of polarizing. But they're going to have a candidate, too. And if it's Elizabeth Warren, there'll be a lot of people that go, oh, no, we can't have that. But whoever it is, they're going to have, just like, you know, Donald Trump was the most unpopular candidate ever to run for president, except for the person he ran against. Yeah. And that's going to be an issue here in Texas next time. So when you have, you know, they're going to have a candidate out there. They're not going to have straight ticket voting. You know, we have a chance we have 2 years to get this right and to go out there, and even if we don't use the same tactics that these did, to actually go and identify our voters and get them out better than we did. I think there was a certain amount of overconfidence. Most Republicans, if we did a good job, that would be enough. You already know, you tend to come out, we'll come and get you. And I think now there's more of an understanding we have to get to the 21st century because, you know, we're already 18 years into it. But anyway, that was a long-winded answer for a whole bunch of different stuff. But I do want to, well, I'll answer one more question, and I'll close by saying something. What's that?
It was a lot of questions. I was out this past, back a few months ago, I was a year or two before that. This is what I found. I mean, I'll tell you 10 words. In reality, 7 of them, nobody's home. No door hanging around. 1 or 2 of the others, somebody goes to the door, somebody already decided. So in reality, there's maybe 1 person out of 10 that you're blocking that's what you're talking to. But 2 questions. 1, first of all, how much good those door hangers even do? And second, is there something that the Republicans can be doing so that maybe the Democrats are doing something so that more of the board that they knock on actually have someone that might be there and interested in hearing what they have to say?
Well, you can't tell who's going to be home. I will tell you this, in my district, when I knock, I get almost 50% of the people being home. And I knock all the time, so it's not a certain time of day or anything like that. Block walking is, after all this technology, after everything I've told you, block walking, actually face-to-face contact with a voter at their home, is still by far the #1 way to persuade somebody both to vote for your side, but also to come out. The Democrats had enough reason. What we would do, you know, it takes me months to knock 8,000 doors myself. I can't go knock them all again the weekend before the election all at one time. I'm not the Flash, right? And so, so typically, block walking has been used to get out and persuade and identify, and then you would get them out to vote a different way. Phone calls, different things. The Democrats in the last couple of cycles have just paid a ton of people to go knock on those doors of folks that they want to get out to vote. So, and we're going to have to do that. We're going to pay a lot of people at the end to go knock on your door and say, hey, sir, have you voted yet? And we really need you. Now, you know, our data shows you haven't voted yet. We got data through yesterday. Unless you voted today in early voting, we need you to come out. And what part of the reason is that it is still voter contact directly from the candidate is the most effective way to get somebody to vote. Voter contact from somebody who's not the candidate is the second best way. Phone, if you can get them, is the third way. And then basically everything else is fourth. And that includes, you know, TV, it includes radio, it includes mail. They're good and they're part of it. You know, McDonald's will do TV ads and radio and all this other stuff. You know, even though that particular TV ad may not get you to go buy a quarter pounder per day, they get enough out there to get, you know, you get your 10,000 gross rating points. But knocking on doors is still the very best way to get people to vote for you. But we're now learning, what we would have learned if we ever had the resources to do it, it's the #1 way to get people to come out to vote. And we actually did know that, we just didn't have the resources for it. I remember back when Orlando Sanchez was running for mayor in 2001, I think he ran in 2003 and 5, I guess it was, or 2001 and 2005, whatever it was. And when he ran, in 2001 and 2005, and when he ran, we had different people out there block walking for us to turn out to vote, including John Culberson. And they tried to bring Culberson in, say, come into the campaign office and phone people. You can phone more people than you can knock. And he said, I'm not going to do it because I'm leaving houses and they're getting out and getting in their car and going. He said, I can see as I knock on Bill's door, when I go to the next door to knock, Bill's getting in his car and driving the polls. And that is the best way to do it. So those of you who don't like knocking on doors, I would at least recommend that you then save up your door knocking volunteering for the end and let them get you to knock the last few days, during early voting and whatever, because you will have a more direct sort of dose response. I knock, therefore they vote. And the data just shows that everyone, that's uniform. It's not like there's some weird places where it doesn't work. It works everywhere. It works in rural places where the next neighbor is 7 miles away. It works in apartment buildings in New York City. It works here in single-family detached houses. It works everywhere. So I do want to close with one last thing, just again, as a reminder that this is Dave's last meeting, and we want the club to continue on. We want to still be able to bring you the message and have you go out and disseminate to people. So hopefully you'll continue to come. But Dave, however long this group lasts and whatever influence it ends up having, it's all because you spent the time to do the work and to create everything, and we really appreciate it. I personally want to give you a round of applause.